Well, hello, it's new quad time, and as the weather gets worse, we think about whooping, flying indoors basically. And there's been a glut recently of 2S whoops, and I've got one here. This is from Happymodel, and it's called the Mobula. I thought it was actually called the Modular. I've been reading it wrong all the time. So 2S power in this one, but still the small size. Let's open the box and see. Not too much to look at inside. You get a sheet of instructions here, and you get the little quad itself. Now this is a FreeSky compatible receiver, so I just have to bind it, although I think the bind button's under there, so I have to take the canopy off. You've got the camera at a little bit of an angle, maybe sort of 20 degrees, not sure how that is for indoors. And I notice on this one what it's got two HV 250 milliamp batteries, so 4.35 volts. And it's got a series connector here. Now I heard some people talk about, oh, you could do this with 1S or 2S batteries. Not with this cable as it stands, because you can't plug one battery in and have it work. You need two batteries in there, or a different way of plugging in by making some little adapter. But yeah, that's the way it flies. So of course what we're after with this sort of thing is something that flies nicely indoors but has the power to go outdoors. The trouble can be, if you get all that power indoors, it's too much for like a small house, like typically we have here in the UK. We're all crushed in and have small little rooms. So these are often the case of trying to fly them gently to sort of explore. But can you then rip it around outside? Elsewhere in the box, now this is called the standard version, where you get a slightly different charger and some extra batteries. This is the charger, and I'm liking what I'm seeing here because it's got 6 charge ports, and with each one you can set it to 0.6 or 0.2 amps, and you've got a switch for 4.35 or 4.2, so regular LiPo or HV LiPo, which is great. And you can plug in with jack plug to like a DC adapter or a LiPo battery. This USB adapter is USB out, so you can charge something else when it's plugged in. Aside from that, there's a little accessories bit, so you've got 4 spare props, a screwdriver and a prop removal tool, and you've got 2 more of the little HV 250 milliamp batteries, which it says are 30/60C, so I guess they can handle a burst. I often find these things really almost, their operating voltage seems to be underneath what you'd normally go back and land with, because obviously they're so small, but we will see. Now this is 75mm motor to motor, so it puts it in the same sort of category as this tiny 75. This is a King Kong one, so same size, very workable indoors, this one, so I'm hoping this is the same. And as I said, there's a glut of these just recently, going all the way down to sort of the 68mm quads, but it's not the first time we've had a 2S whoop style, if we can count the much larger 100mm. This is the King Kong ET100, which was surprisingly stable and easy to fly indoors. You could rip it around outdoors, but it would still feel a little bit lacking. And I notice in this we've got a little bit more up tilt on the camera, which would be really interesting, because although that's a real good rip around outdoors, how's it going to cope indoors? Well, yeah, let's open it up, get it bound, get it onto Betaflight, see what we need to do, and then we can take it, well, I say take it out for a fly, take it around the house and then take it out and see how we go. Okay, so let's talk Betaflight setup. The plug for this is on the bottom of the quad, so if it looks like it's not flat, that's because it's not. It's got a big USB cable stuck up there. Ports wise, you've got TBS Smart Audio and you've got the USB. You notice UART2 is not set to serial. This is because it uses a completely different type of receiver, which we'll come to in just a second. All looking good here with D-Shot 600 and motor stop on. 8K 2K loop, and what we've got here is SPI RX support, which is built into this board, and it's set to FreeSky X, which is equivalent to a D16. I originally tried to bind this with a D8 and it wasn't having it, and I found out it was because of this. I should mention the binding. It's very important to read the instructions. You do have to take the top off as per this photo and press this button, but it's not about powering up with the button pressed. It's about pressing this button for a certain amount of seconds, waiting for the flashes, and then putting your radio to bind and looking for the different coloured lights to say it was all okay. Pit tuning wise, doesn't look too different from normal actually. I'm just going to whack this up to 0.8. So it might need a bit of going over. I generally find that these little whoops need a little bit more than the norm. Sometimes you get some sort of crazy looking stats in them. And what I found here is, if you look at the quad spinning madly, the default channel map for this was TAER, which is not what I use as a mode 2er. I use AETR. But this is pretty easy to change. You literally just go in, delete what's there with your keyboard and type in the way you want it, and that's all good. You'll see I'm just a little bit out on the roll and yaw, so I'm going to come back and sort out that sub trim before I fly it. Modes wise, this is how it came, and it's a kind of a little strange setup. It's almost how I want it, but it's kind of suggesting that it's normally in acro and then angles in the middle, and then at the end of the aux2 switch you'd go to acro with air mode. So I'm gonna fit acro, angle and horizon, have air mode as a separate switch, of course have turtle mode, flip over after crash, which is set up here as it is, but I just need to change this around a little bit. And here's the OSD as it comes default, and it's not bad at all actually. I'm quite enjoying the fact that people are making a little bit more of an effort to try and tidy things up. I'm going to swap this around to my sort of more normal type of layout. If you've seen any of my videos before, you'll recognise it. And just to clarify exactly what we're running on here, it's this one on Betaflight 350. Quick note about the charger, because I really like it. You just plug stuff in, it tells you each channel what the voltage is as it goes. You get a solid light when it charges. It actually says it goes off when it finishes charging, but I found it sort of flickers like this. But you know, just a standard DC plug in here, and you can just set 6 batteries to go. Obviously we only get the 4, but it's really nice. It's so worth it over the little. And on the other package, the non-standard, you get just a single USB charger, which is going to take ages with all these batteries, because they don't last an awful long time. And obviously if you're out in the field and you've got a whole bunch of batteries, you can plug in via a LiPo and you can carry on going all day quite happily. Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the lounge, where I've got the Mobula7 ready for its maiden. I must admit, I've been a little bit nervous. I mean, I've flown 2S indoors before, but that camera angle is giving me a little bit of a worry. But as it's a whoop, I want to try it indoors, see how suitable it is. It might not be, it might be fine. And then I'll try it outside a bit later. But let's do a quick line of sight with it first, and we'll see how we go. Okay, so just need to check this for a hover. Yeah, not bad on power. Not really much room to do much else with it. Oh, I know where I'm going there. Try that again. Got to be quite gentle on the throttle. A throttle curve wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, it works. So let's get the goggles on. And this is what greeted me on my FPV feed. Oh dear, that's not looking so good, is it? But I tried taking off anyway to see what would happen, and first it's like, oh, it's clearing, and then no, it's getting worse again. What's going on here? It was already quite difficult to fly because there was sort of too much power, so I'm already hitting the ceiling and lampshades. And then as I come back, it clears up again, but then as I turn away and go off again, it went bad again. Something clearly wrong here, so I stopped what I was doing and I stripped it down, had a good look at the camera and the connections. I took it out completely, and I have to say it's actually put together very nicely. Everything's soldered in well, and there's liquid plastic over the joints. What I did find, and I think this is it, is when you bend the camera right up, and I'm trying to show it here, the PCB of the camera touches down on the PCB of the main board, and I don't know if this is shorting or just pressing against something. But I found with the angle up as it was, there was definitely a problem. But if you flatten the angle down a bit more, then it was clean. So I think this is a bit of a bad design on this part. Okay, let's try that again. So we're back on 2S and we're in horizon mode.
And we've got the door open because you only have to fly it for a second to say, this is going quickly. What I did in between that little fix as well is I added 30% of throttle expo, so I had a little bit more in the middle. And I have to say, this feels a bit of a handful indoors. Even just sort of going around quite gently inside is tricky. And I've put the angle quite flat here, but you can still go reasonably fast. It already feels way too fast for the house. And it's quite, I found hard just getting the throttle when you're in sort of a smaller space. You know, it would be really easy to just let it rip and go fast, but even in a garden, I'm like, I don't want to fall out of my garden into the road or something, so it's a little bit worrying. But it feels like it can go so fast indoors, like scarily fast. But what I thought I'd do as well, I'd try normal angle mode, because surely that's going to be calmer. But, you know, on this much power, on this much weight, it's still pretty quick. And my garden is feeling awfully small awfully quickly when this covers this much ground. Take some hits though. I've been bashing into everything and it just bounces off. So let's try and have an obligatory explore of the house, which is not made easy the fact that TV's there. And also gives me a good chance to see if total mode's fine. I'm getting a little bit more used to flicking into total mode, flicking the quad over and getting back into the regular mode and going again. As you can see, the 25 milliwatt VTX is working pretty well. This camera's doing okay. At the moment though, in my tiny little rooms, we've just got so much power that we really just don't want. This is absolutely the power we want outside when we've got a bit more space, but even with that throttle expo, even with the camera flat, it's still pretty hard to get this quad just where you want it. It just wants to go crazy. Got a nice big garden and a nice big house, you'll be laughing. As for myself, I felt like I was just struggling to keep it contained, really. So what is the solution? Well, inside, fly at 1S and fly the camera right down. Hey, wait a minute, I hear you say. You said you couldn't fly at 1S. Well, no, I said you couldn't fly at 1S without doing a little bit of tinkering, which is what I did here, and I'll come to show you exactly what I did. But yeah, this is with the camera very much flat, and it's on a 1S battery. I should say it's not a fully charged battery, because I wanted to test out the theory quickly. But on 1S, even with the camera like this, it's going plenty fast enough, but it is giving us the opportunity to be able to do more precise maneuvers inside the house without, well, basically losing control of it. You can go nice and slow, nice and gentle, but it's still got that power, and you can go with that burst of speed when you want it to. So yeah, this feels easily as fast as any of the other 1S brushless quads I've had. I thought this might struggle if it's used to sort of 2S power, but no, this is not a particularly heavy quad. It's just set up so it can take two 1S batteries instead of just one. But with one 1S battery, it's absolutely great. And it's having a fine old time here, and it's very manoeuvrable. And I feel very in control. Not at all like 2S, where I felt very out of control. And I now no longer feel a danger to myself, my house, or my surroundings. Which is good news. Let's bring it in, and I'll show you what I did.
It's probably worth a quick word about if you want to run this on 1S, how do you do it? Because it's not entirely obvious. The default position is you've got these two 1S batteries and you've got the series connector. So if you simply took one battery away and then connected the other one, it just wouldn't work because the circuit's not complete. You'll notice that the live goes here and needs to go back again, so that's not happening. So what I did, first thing was take this red thing out because that's going to get in the way. And I also just put in a little bit of padding under here just to keep the battery nice and tight, because else it's a little bit loose if there's just one. Slide the battery along like so. So what I'm doing, I'm taking one of these and I've got a little jumper. This basically just connects one pin to the other, and these came with the old FreeSky DR4s, but you find them in loads of things like PCs and stuff. If you just pop that in there, what this essentially does is just connect these two pins together. So the idea being that when on this one the voltage goes straight back and the ground comes in back out there and completes the circuit. So now if we plug in, it's all happy. Now the other thing I learned from having a look at the inside of this, trying to fix that problem, is this camera's quite movable. You just loosen it off a little bit and you can make it flat. Inside, for slow exploring and just generally flying around, flatter camera, 1S, still a good little quad. And let's have another look at 2S, taking it outside.
Well, hey everybody, and welcome to the woods, or what's left of them. I haven't been able to get here for a few months because the Forestry Commission were doing some work here. And the work involves, it would seem, cutting down a lot of trees and leaving this massive trench full of water where they drove in and out. So it's not quite the sort of tight and crowded area of woods, which may be better. Who knows? And this is what I'm flying. This little guy on a 2S setup, because on a big area it's going to feel a bit slower, but proximity, getting close to stuff, this is where it really comes into its own, and it feels really quick and fast. So I'm going to try zipping around this bit, and happily enough, you know, it's a little bit easier to orientate yourself because just look for the big puddles of water, but try not to crash or land in them. Let's try it. And here we go, outside and flying. And the first thing to note is the field of view and the camera is pretty good. I've got fairly sharp vision. It wasn't an overly bright day, but there was a little bit of sun. There was also quite a bit of wind, a bit of a breeze, but it was handling this okay. I mean, it wasn't the smoothest, but this thing is tiny, so for what it is in terms of size, it was doing okay. Now, this didn't feel like super quick, but I do note there that I had the camera angle still sort of set for let's flying around at home, and this wasn't made easier by the fact that I then lumped it into a branch later and made the camera go down even further. That said, I hit a few things just flying around, and you know, it didn't cause damage to the props, it didn't make it fall out of the sky, it just kind of bounced off and carried on. Well, let's go on to the second lot of batteries I did, and I wanted to up the power on the VTX. Not so much because it needed it, just because I thought it would be useful to see if we had any sort of interference by upping the power to 200 milliwatts, which seems slightly insane on a quad this size, but hey, let's give it a try anyway. I've gone ahead and I've upped the camera angle a little bit more here, but there was a little problem again because I didn't really have those screws tight, so during the course of the flight you will see it move, and that probably attributes for a little bit of shaking on the camera as well. But yeah, I'm actually really enjoying it for this sort of proximity. It's not super quick, but it's, you know, it's up there with the previous little 2S quads I started out flying when the sort of micro stuff was coming along, and the difference being I wouldn't ever fly those inside. And this reacts pretty much just as you would like it to. You don't get any problems with, you know, not having that power. The power to weight ratio is really good, so when you go into a maneuver it will just happen. The only things you've got to think about, and this isn't so much a situation in here because I'm kind of shielded from the wind a little bit, but of course if you're outside and you're doing any maneuvers where, you know, you're using air mode, perhaps you're going inverted, you're putting the throttle right down, it's obviously going to blow around in the wind, and these are going to blow around more than a normal little quad because those prop guards really do act as little sails. They will get caught into the wind and they will screw you up a little bit. You could find yourself sort of spinning the way you don't want to. Of course the PID controller should help you out there, but there's always a possibility that things aren't going to quite react the way you want them to. Obviously you don't have that inertia as well, so if you're trying to push forward and you're, you know, wanting to get some hang time upside down over something, you're going to run out of that forward momentum very quickly because these are so small and they don't go super quick. You'll notice as well that I get about 2 minutes out of the 2S battery combo, which is fairly good. It's just a case that you know, I want more batteries. But I had a great time in these woods. I think this sort of close proximity is what you want to do. If you put this in a big open field, it's not going to feel quite so good.
Well, this turned out to be full of surprises. Not the least, a few little problems with it. And there's a few things I'd mention generally. I mean, it's really good that this is the first of this type of whoop we've actually had with a movable camera, which is really important because if you're in the house, you need to be flat. Unless you're living in a mansion, you've got loads of space, you want it quite flat. If you want to go really fast around, you want to up tilt. But of course there was that problem, and I think this is what it is. If the up tilt is extreme, then the two PCBs clash, and I think there's some sort of shorting or some sort of grounding issue happening that's having a problem there. The other thing I found was a little bit of a problem is even when you've got both batteries in, they tend to be a little loose here. It would have been useful to have this coated with some sort of rubber just to create that little bit of friction. For me, I was putting in that little bit of, I had this little bit of flexible foam packing stuff, and as soon as it went in there, it held the two batteries and squashed them down together, and that was a lot better, stopped them moving around. So I tend to think the natural place to fly this, its sort of environment where it will excel, is going to be sort of the sports hall. If you're one of these guys where you're able to organise sort of sports hall indoor racing with this sort of thing, it's going to be great because it's super quick, super controllable, and you can bash into things and it won't matter. You'll just have to be careful because you will really want that extreme camera angle, but you'll have to be very careful about what's going on underneath there. I don't know if it's a case of maybe insulating underneath or something's getting pushed down, but be careful there. But as a quad that can work in the house and outside the house, it stands up fairly well. I mean, it's always a compromise. There's better things that are purely indoors and there's obviously better things that are purely outdoors. But this is great if you're just doing you know, you want to fly around the house when it's a bit miserable, or you want to go from the house into a garden, or you're away camping or something for a weekend and you just want to take something small just to fly around. And bear in mind, this is a charger that will do 6 batteries at a time, and you've hardly got anything to carry, and the whole thing goes complete back in its box, so it's really easy to carry around. But yeah, it's really quite an exciting little development because it's got so much power when you need it, but the fact you can bring it down to 1S, although Happymodel don't mention it, perhaps they should, because it's a fairly useful thing to be able to do. The fact you can fly 1S with a little bit of tinkering and it goes much better in the house, and then you've still got that 2S power when you want to take it out in a larger space, either indoors or outdoors, I think it's really nice. So as mentioned, this is the Happymodel Mobula7. I still can't get my head around the name. I want to keep saying modular, but Mobula7. It came from Banggood. Thanks Banggood for review. I enjoyed doing that one, and of course there'll be links down to Banggood down below, and any questions, comments, etc, etc, chuck them down below as well, and I'll do my best to answer them. I hope that's been helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.